Upadesa Sahasri. Upadesa Sahasri. We come now to the Upadesa Sahasri, which translates roughly as 1,000 instructions or the 1,000 teachings of the One. The text is attributed to Adi Shankaracharya, the great consolidator of Advaita Vedanta, who lived somewhere in the 8th century of the Common Era, though the precise dates of his birth and death remain uncertain, and scholars continue to debate how much of the surviving corpus was written by a single hand. What we can say is this: the Upadesa Sahasri stands as one of the clearest and most uncompromising expressions of non-dual instruction in the entire Sanskrit tradition. Its purpose is not to argue for a philosophical position, but to perform a direct dismantling of the mistaken identity that causes human suffering. It moves from prose instructions for the teacher and student through a series of metrical verses toward a final silence in which the teachings themselves are dissolved. It is a text that uses words to bring words to an end. With that, we step inside the teaching itself. The protocol of transmission. When a seeker approaches, one who is calm, dispassionate, and hungry for freedom, the teacher must first examine the foundation. Has this student seen the grave within the grain, the recognition that every worldly result is a dying thing? Is the student willing to surrender the current sense of identity in order to find what is true? Has the noise of ordinary life quieted enough for the inner silence to be heard? If these conditions are not met, the knowledge will be infected by the ego. The teacher does not give truth to an unprepared mind. The teacher scrubs the mind until the truth, which was always already present, can finally be seen. The teacher then speaks to the student in this way: you believe you are a person, you believe you carry a name, a lineage, a story, you believe you are the one who acts and the one who suffers. This is a misdiagnosis. Brahman, the ground of all being, is the unmoving canvas. Name and form are the paint. The error called avidya is the belief that the paint is the canvas. The world is like foam on the ocean. The foam has its name and its shape, but its substance is only water. By attending to the bubbles, you have forgotten the sea. The specific knot that must be cut is the confusion between the subject, which is awareness itself, and the object, which is the body and mind. When you say I am fat, or I am sick, or I am old, you are attributing the properties of what is seen to the one who sees. Sickness belongs to the body. Awareness has no weight and no cells. This identity theft is the source of all grief. You are an infinite presence that has mistaken itself for a suffering and limited creature inside a dream. The spell of this confusion cannot be broken by action, because action is part of the spell. It cannot be broken by will, because the will belongs to the dream. It is broken only by the word of the teaching applied with surgical precision, until the hallucination of separateness dissolves. The protocol of transmission is the deliberate and repeated application of the sentence that thou art, until the sense of otherness vanishes. The prose section of the teaching, what the text calls the Gadya Prathama Prakarana, the first prose chapter, lays out this protocol in full. The qualifications of the seeker, the duties of the teacher, and the means by which the identity between the individual self and Brahman is to be made unmistakably clear. But there is also a second prose chapter, the Gadya Dvitiya Prakarana, which takes up a related and equally essential inquiry, the question of who or what it is that knows the field of experience. The Bhagavad Gita distinguishes the field, the body, the senses, the mind, the objects of the world, from the knower of the field, the one in whose light all of it is seen. The second prose chapter of the Upadesa Sahasri presses into this distinction. The knower of the field is not itself a field. It is not an object among other objects. It has no inside to be examined from outside. It is the very examination itself. This knower, present and luminous and unencumbered, is the self whose recognition the entire teaching is organized to produce. We carry both prose chapters as background throughout everything that follows. The disposal of the costume. The teacher continues the incision. You say I am a man, you say I am old or I am hungry, but you are identifying with the gross body, which is nothing more than food transformed into skin and bone. The body is an object perceived by you the way a stone or a pot is perceived. The body is mortal, born of seed and blood, destined eventually for dissolution. You are the one who sees the body. You cannot be the body itself. Set aside the identification with the physical frame as you would set aside a garment found in the road. It has no essential connection to what you are. The student retreats inward and says, perhaps I am not the flesh, but I am my energy, my hunger, my movement. The teacher responds, look at the breath. It moves through the sleeping body even when the mind is absent. It is a biological mechanism. It does not know that it exists. Is this mechanism the master? Is it the light of awareness? No, it is the engine that keeps the body functioning for the sake of survival. It is not you. The teacher then strikes at the deepest root of social identity. Throw away the thought I am a Brahmin, I am a student, I am a householder. These labels belong to the lineage and the social role. They are properties of the costume, not of the wearer. Caste belongs to the body's inheritance. A name is a label given by a father. A role is a performance for others. To claim a title is to insist on being a piece of something rather than the whole of it. The student, stripped of body and social role, asks in a kind of panic, if I am not the flesh, not the breath, not my name, then what am I? I feel I am disappearing into nothingness. The teacher replies quietly, who is the one witnessing the disappearance? Who is aware that the body has been set aside? Who sees the void? The witness is the one thing that cannot be discarded. You cannot throw away the awareness that is doing the throwing. This witness is unstained, the way space is not dirtied by whatever it contains. It is unchanged, the same silent presence in the child and in the old person. It is luminous, the light in which ignorance itself becomes visible. The canonical verses of the metrical chapters press this same point with concentrated force. We hear them now as they were intended, as hammers, not as poetry. You are not the body, you are not what belongs to the body, you are not the agent of action, you are not the enjoyer of its fruits, you are the witness. This alone is your truth. Know this and be free. The one who takes himself to be the body is confused about his own nature. He mistakes the seen for the seer. He is like a man who, looking into a mirror, concludes that the face in the glass has come to visit him. The face in the glass is his own reflection. The body in experience is the self's own appearance. Neither the visitor nor the face is real in the way the seer is real. I am not born, I do not die, I do not grow thin or become fat, I do not weaken or age, I have no senses and no mind. I am the pure witness, untouched by what is witnessed. This is the recognition the teacher transmits. This is what the student must receive until it settles as fact. The recognition of presence. Student, stripped of every familiar identity, stands in what feels like a great emptiness and asks whether there is simply nothing left. The teacher offers a forensic correction. Nothingness is itself a perceived state. You are aware of the absence of the body. You are aware of the absence of thoughts. The awareness of the absence cannot itself be absent. The self is what remains. It is the one who stays to report that the theater is empty. You are not the void. You are the light that makes the void visible. The nature of this remaining awareness is self-luminous. It does not need a second mind to know it, nor a lamp to light it. A jar needs a lamp to be seen. A thought needs an eye to be known. But the eye, the awareness itself, is seen by nothing beyond itself. If awareness needed another awareness to perceive it, we would fall into an endless regress of lamps requiring lamps. The light stops at you. You are the foundational radiance upon which the entire world of objects is appearing. Consider the arc of a single day. In waking, the world is loud and the eye perceives the sun. In dreaming, the world is private and the eye perceives interior landscapes. In deep sleep, the world is gone and the eye rests in darkness. The sun, the interior landscape, and the darkness are changing variables, but the seer is the constant. The self is like a compass always pointing toward being. While the needle of the mind swings through joy and sorrow, the pivot never moves. Sovereignty is the recognition that you are the unchanging sky in which the three states rise and set like temporary planets. What is the texture of this self? It is a solid, undivided mass of awareness, what the tradition calls Vijnanagana. The mind has parts, desire, memory, doubt. The body has parts, limbs, cells, breath, but awareness has no seams. It is like a block of pure gold. You can work it into 1,000 ornaments, a ring, a chain, a crown, but the gold itself remains a single, unfragmented substance. You are that unbroken substance. The many forms you see in the mirror are simply the ways the gold has been shaped by the hammer of ignorance. The gold was never divided. The verses of the metrical section press the same realization from a slightly different angle, and we should let them speak directly. There is one self in all bodies, as there is one moon in all the pots of water in which it is reflected. The pots are many and scattered, but the moon is not scattered. Know yourself as that one moon. Know yourself as that one undivided knowing. Being and consciousness and fullness are not three attributes of a self that would be real without them. They are the self. Wherever there is the sense of being alive, of being present, of being here at all, that is the self announcing itself. The cave of the heart is not a location inside the chest. It is the interior of existence itself. The one who goes there does not travel. The one who finds it does not arrive. The light of awareness. Shankara opens the verse section of the teaching by naming the nature of this awareness. It is the unsetting sun. The physical sun rises in the morning and sets at night, leaving the world in darkness. The mental sun of thought rises with desire and sets with fulfillment, leaving the mind in a kind of void. But the awareness that underlies both is present when the physical sun is gone, present in dreams, present when the mind itself is gone, present in deep sleep. You do not become conscious. You are the consciousness that makes the very concepts of day and night possible. Moving through the geography of a single day, the teaching proves the self's independence from every state. In waking, the self illuminates the gross world, the stones and the people and the noise. It is the light of the eye. In dreaming, the self illuminates the subtle world of memory and imagination. It is its own sun. In deep sleep, the self illuminates the absence of objects. It is the light of the void itself. If you were only the waker, you would die when the dream begins. If you were only the dreamer, you would vanish in deep sleep. Since you survive the transit between all three states, you are the unmoving background. You are the screen on which three different states are projected. A common fear arises here. If I am the light of the world, am I not stained by the world's darkness? If I illuminate a murder, am I a murderer? Consider how sunlight behaves. It shines on a temple and is not made holy. It shines on a gutter and is not made filthy. It shines on a corpse and does not die. The light provides visibility, but does not share the nature of what it reveals. You are stainless awareness. The entire drama of your life, the birth of the body, the history of the ego, the eventual death of the form, is a play of shadows that cannot leave a single mark on what you are. Because you are the witness of change, you are changeless. Because you are the knower of death, you are deathless. To know that something has moved, you must be stationary. To know that something has died, you must be present. To know that I was once a child, you must be the presence that was there then and is here now. You are unborn. Birth is an event seen by you. Growth is a process witnessed by you. You are the eternal now in which past and future are simply two different ripples of thought. The canonical verses make this luminosity precise and worth hearing in full. I am not produced by any cause. I am not destroyed by any force. I was never bound by anything. I was never released from bondage. The liberation that is spoken of in the teaching is not the liberation of a person. It is the recognition that there was never a person to liberate. The self is always already free, the way the sky is always already open, regardless of what clouds pass through it. The sense organs are not the self. Hearing is not the self. Touching is not the self. Seeing is not the self. Tasting and smelling are not the self. Thinking is not the self. The self is the one before whom all these activities perform their brief appearances and then retire. Even the absence of sensation, the silence after the sound, is witnessed by the self. Even the gap between two thoughts is held by the self. The self is the container without walls. This awareness does not vary with the quality of the mind that it illumines. It shines equally on the clarity of the sage and the confusion of the frightened person. The frightened person has not less of the self. The frightened person has simply forgotten what the self is. Remembering requires no addition. It requires only the falling away of a mistaken belief. The refutation of negation. The skeptic now raises a challenge. You say not this, not this. You negate the body, the mind, the senses. If everything that can be perceived is negated, nothing remains. The self is a fiction and the end of the path is a vacuum. There is no sun, only the absence of shadow. Shankara responds with a logical observation. Negation requires a negator. If you say there is nothing, your own voice betrays you. The awareness that reports the nothing is the one thing that cannot itself be nothing. The one who denies the self is like a person who uses their own tongue to say, I have no tongue. To deny the existence of the seer, you must first perceive its absence. The awareness of the absence is itself a presence. The denier is the self. Even the thought I do not exist is a ripple on the surface of an unmoving existence. You can negate the content of consciousness, but you cannot negate the consciousness that holds the content. What is the difference between a dream and the self? The dream is negated when you wake. The self is present during the dream and present during the waking. What is negated is provisional and temporary. What remains after all negation is what the teaching calls satya, the true and the enduring. The self is the last thing standing when the philosophical war is over. When the world is dissolved by rigorous analysis, the self is the one holding the sword. Consider the silence of deep sleep. The skeptic says, "In sleep there is no I, therefore the I is a product of the mind." Shankara replies, "If the I were gone in sleep, who would report upon waking that I slept well? You do not say a ghost was asleep while I was absent. You say I was there, witnessing the lack of things. Awareness in sleep is like a lamp in an empty room. The furniture is gone, but the light is on. The void of deep sleep is not an absence of you. It is the fullness of you, without a second object to divide your attention." The canonical metrical verses sharpen this argument considerably, and we stay close to their logic here. The inner witness does not rise and set like the sun. It is not young in youth and old in old age. It does not brighten in understanding and dim in confusion. It is the witness of all these changes and therefore cannot be any of them. Whatever changes you know, whatever you know you are not. What you cannot know because you cannot stand outside it and observe it, that alone is what you are. The five sheaths that appear to wrap the self, the physical body, the vital energy, the thinking mind, the intellect, the bliss of deep sleep, are each illuminated by the witness, and therefore each is distinct from the witness. The physical body is seen, the vital energy is seen, the movements of the mind are seen, the operations of the intellect are seen, even the happiness of deep sleep is seen, known upon waking as something that was there. All that is seen is not the seer. What remains when all five are seen through is the pure seeing itself. That is the self. The eye of the gaze. The ordinary person believes the eyes are windows. I am in here, the tree is out there, and seeing is a bridge that crosses the gap. Shankara offers a correction. Consciousness does not travel outward to find its object. If the eye were literally a bridge, how could it reach a star billions of miles away in an instant? What we call the tree is a luminous modification of the mind, appearing as if it were outside. The chain of perception works this way. There is the light of awareness, unmoving. There is the mind wave, the fluid movement of the mind that takes the shape of an object. And there is the object, the jar or the tree. When you see a jar, the mind flows out and takes the form of the jar. The blue jar you perceive is not outside your awareness. You only ever know the jar as a shape of knowing. Since you cannot see anything outside of your own awareness, the sense of distance is a feature of the thought, not a fact about the world. Consider the dream again. In a dream you see a vast mountain. It appears to be out there, separate from you. When you wake, you do not ask where the mountain went or who removed the heavy rocks from the room. You understand that the mountain was inside the awareness. The waking world works the same way. The sense of outwardness is a property of the thought, not a property of the world. Awareness is the mirror. The world is the reflection. The reflection appears deep, but the glass is perfectly flat. The student asks, if the mind is taking shapes, am I those shapes? The mind is the dancer and awareness is the lamp. The dancer moves, taking the shape of anger, then the shape of a jar, then the shape of joy. The lamp does not move. It does not become angry when it lights up anger. It does not become clay when it lights up a jar. You are the witness of the gaze. You observe the mind wave rising, taking form and dissolving. The watcher is never what is watched. The eye of the gaze is eternally stationary. The verses of the canonical text press this point with a directness worth hearing plainly. The self is not an object of perception. It is not reached by the eye. It is not heard by the ear. It is not touched, tasted, or smelled. It is not grasped by the mind. The mind, when it turns toward the self, does not find an object. It finds the dissolution of the distance between finder and found. This is what the Upanishads call knowing the knower. Not a second act of knowledge, but the falling away of the illusion that the knower was ever hidden. The mirror and the glint. The student asks, "You say I am the infinite sun, but I feel like a small and flickering candle. I feel hunger. I feel pain. If I am the absolute, why does the absolute feel so small and miserable inside this body?" The teacher introduces the concept of abhasa, the reflection or the glint. The misery does not belong to the sun. It belongs to the medium in which the sun appears to be reflected. There are three components to what you experience as personhood. There is the original, which is pure unconditioned awareness. There is the internal instrument, the mind, the intellect, the sense of I made of subtle matter, which serves as the medium. And there is the apparent consciousness that seems to animate this instrument, the glint of the original appearing within the medium. The medium is naturally inert, like a cold and darkened surface. Awareness is naturally bright and unmoving, like the sun. When the light of the self falls upon the mind instrument, the whole complex appears to wake up and become sentient. That apparent sentience, which thinks, which plans, which says I, is what we call the individual ego. It is not a second consciousness added to the system. It is the one consciousness appearing to be localized and limited by the boundaries of the instrument it inhabits. Now it is important to be careful here, because there is a subtlety in Shankara's actual position that is easy to blur. Later schools of Vedanta, particularly those associated with the Vivarana reading of Shankara, will develop a full reflection theory called Bimba-Pratibimba-Vada, in which the individual self is treated as a genuine reflection of Brahman in the mirror of ignorance, much as a face is reflected in a literal mirror. That model has its own elegance. But Shankara's own position in the Upadesa Sahasri is somewhat more restrained. The self does not actually enter the mirror. The self does not literally produce a second image of itself in the medium. What happens is closer to what the tradition calls the limitation model. Consciousness appears delimited, bounded, as if contained by the upadhi, the limiting adjunct, which is the mind-body instrument. Think of the sky appearing in a pot of water. The sky has not entered the pot. The sky has not been reflected in the pot as a second sky. The sky simply appears to be localized there, seen from outside as a small patch of blue, because the boundaries of the pot create the impression of containment. The pot breaks, and the separate sky in the pot vanishes, not because a reflected image has dissolved, but because the apparent limitation has been removed. The self was always the unbounded sky. The limitation was always only apparent. This is the model the Upadesa Sahasri leans toward, the appearance of smallness without the production of a genuinely separate reflected entity. With that clarification in place, the practical teaching continues. Observe how a limitation behaves. If the instrument is agitated, the awareness appears agitated. If the instrument is clouded by grief, the awareness appears dim and sorrowful. If the instrument is small and bounded by a particular biography, the awareness appears small and personal. The instrument's qualities belong entirely to the instrument. When you have identified with the apparent limitation, you have confused the pot-shaped patch of sky for the sky itself. The recognition that liberates is simply this: I am the unbounded sky. The patch of blue inside the pot is a feature of the pot, not a feature of me. The skeptic asks, if the individual consciousness has no independent reality, why does it seem so thoroughly conscious? The answer is that it borrows its seeming from the real. Remove the self and the instrument has no animation at all. Remove the instrument and the self remains exactly as it was. The appearing consciousness is entirely dependent. The original awareness is entirely independent. The candle does not produce its own light. It transmits the light of what is already burning. The syntax of identity. The student hears the sentence that thou art and sees a logical impossibility. That refers to the Lord of all creation, the all-knowing, the eternal. Thou refers to the suffering, limited, mortal person. Put together literally, the sentence seems like madness, like saying fire is water. To find the truth, the mind must perform an extraction. The contradictory qualities must be cut away until the identical substance beneath is revealed. Shankara explains with an example. Imagine you see a man today in a forest wearing a monk's robe. You saw the same man 10 years ago in a city wearing royal silk. You say, this is that same man. To make this identification, you discard the monk's robe and the royal silk. You discard the forest and the city. You discard the past and the present. What you keep is only the person underneath all the clothing and all the locations. So it is with that thou art. Strip away from that its quality of omniscience and cosmic power. Strip away from thou the body, the hunger, the ignorance. What remains in both is pure awareness. The identity is not between the Lord and the person as they appear on the surface. It is between the awareness that is the Lord's innermost nature and the awareness that is your own innermost nature. This operation has a technical name in the tradition. It is called Jahadajaholakshana, which means a method of meaning that partly discards and partly retains. The sentence that thou art has two sides, and each side carries two layers of meaning. The surface meaning, what the grammarians call vakyartha, the directly denoted sense, is the layer that must be partially abandoned. Directly, that denotes the cosmic Lord, conditioned by omniscience and the governance of all worlds. Directly, thou denotes the individual self, conditioned by ignorance and limitation. These two surface meanings genuinely contradict each other and cannot be equated. But each word also carries an implied meaning, what the tradition calls lakshyartha, the indicated or pointed to sense, reached by moving beneath the surface description to the underlying fact. The implied meaning of that, when you strip away the cosmic conditioning, is pure unconditioned awareness. The implied meaning of thou, when you strip away the individual conditioning, is exactly the same pure unconditioned awareness. The identity the sentence proclaims is not at the level of the directly denoted surface. It is at the level of the implied depth. You do not say the cosmic Lord and the individual person are one, which would be absurd. You say the awareness at the heart of both is one, which is the simple truth. The sentence performs a kind of surgery. It discards the contradictory outer attributes of both sides and retains the identical inner nature that the outer attributes had been concealing. Usually a sentence describes a relationship between two things. The flower is blue relates a color to a plant, but this great sentence is of a different kind. It does not join you to the absolute. It reveals that you were never separate from it. The distance was a linguistic error, an error at the level of the surface meaning that was never corrected by attending to what the words are actually pointing toward. The equation collapses the two into one not by force, but by clarity. The skeptic asks, can a single sentence set me free? Consider the man who has forgotten he is the 10th member of the group. He weeps because he thinks the 10th man has drowned. He counts the others, reaches 9 and mourns. He does not need a meditation practice to recover his peace. He needs the word of a passerby who says, "You are the 10th man." The great sentence is that word. It does not produce Brahman. It dissolves the amnesia about your own nature. The moment the sentence is understood by a mind cleared of doubt, the limited ego vanishes like a shadow under a midday sun. The recognition is immediate because what is being recognized, the self, is already fully present. The death of agency. The student, still feeling the weight of ordinary life, asks, I understand the equation of identity, but I still have to eat and work and carry responsibilities. My hands are busy. My mind is full of plans. How can I say I am the absolute when I am so obviously a doer? Is a doer not the opposite of the infinite? The teacher draws a distinction between the mechanism and the light. Consider a lamp placed in a room where a man is carving wood. The man works and sweats and creates a bowl. The lamp provides the light for the carving. When the bowl is finished, does the lamp say, I made a bowl? When the man grows tired, is the lamp exhausted? Awareness is that lamp. The mind is the carver. The mind takes the materials of experience and shapes them into actions. The light of the self makes the doing visible, but does not participate in the deed. To say, I am the doer, is as absurd as the sun claiming it planted the seeds in the field below. The linguistic root of agency is the error. You say I do, I see, I hear. You have taken the verbs that belong to the machine and attributed them to the stillness of the subject. Seeing is a modification of the eye. Thinking is a modification of the mind. Walking is a modification of the feet. None of these are properties of awareness. Awareness has no limbs, no vocal cords, no neurological pathways. The doer is a superimposition upon what is actually still. Look at clouds racing across a sky. A child says the sky is running. The sky is stationary. It is the condition in which the clouds move, but it does not share the cloud's velocity. If the I were actually the doer, the I would change with every action. You would be a mover when walking and a stayer when sitting. But the awareness is the same in both states. The I that knows I am walking is the exact same I that knows I am sitting. What is constant cannot be the variable. You are the non-doer. The canonical verses from the metrical chapters press this particular realization with great precision. Action belongs to the body. Action belongs to the vital energy moving through the body. Action belongs to the sense organs engaging with their objects. Action belongs to the intellect forming intentions and the mind deliberating upon them. None of these are you. You are the pure light in which the whole chain of action is seen from first movement to final result. The one who sees the action from beginning to end cannot be inside the action. The one who is outside every action is the one who has never acted. This is not a counsel of passivity. The body will continue to act. The counsel is of correct understanding. Know yourself as the one who watches, and you will never again suffer the weight of false authorship. The sovereign vision. The student looks at the world and asks, I am no longer the doer, but the world is vast, varied, and apparently independent of me. It is full of friends and enemies, life and death. How can I call this other my own self? Shankara responds that the sense of otherness is a cognitive disease, the result of forgetting what everything is made of. Consider a man who dreams he is walking through a crowded market. He sees 1,000 faces, the stone of the street, the heat of the sun. While he is dreaming, he feels like a small person in a large world. When he wakes, does he find the market outside his head? No, he understands that the stone, the sun, and the faces were all made of his own dream substance. The other was his own mind wearing a mask. The waking world works the same way. The stars and the oceans and the people are vibrations of the ground state. Since you are that ground state, they are vibrations of you. The recognition is this: the universe is my body, the sun is my eye, the wind is my breath, the space is my heart. The root of biological anxiety is the belief that the other has an independent heart. You fear that the tiger can bite you or the enemy can harm you. But if a man accidentally bites his own tongue, he does not seek revenge against his teeth. When right vision is established, the enemy vanishes. There is no separate substance to threaten you. The tiger is your own ferocity appearing to itself. The enemy is your own power misunderstood. Fear is impossible when identity is complete. The nature of love shifts here as well. Ordinarily, you love people because they please the ego. This is a fragile and conditional love. The one who has seen clearly loves all beings because they are recognized as one's own presence. Not others who deserve compassion, but the same awareness wearing different faces. You cannot help but care for your own limbs. The verses that carry this sovereign vision in the canonical text deserve to be heard directly. The seer of all is not seen by any. The seer of the eye is not seen by the eye. The seer of the mind is not known by the mind as an object. Brahman, which is this self, knows itself by itself. The way of flame is both the burning and the brightness. There is no second position from which to observe it, and no second moment in which it becomes what it already is. The ancient formula is exact. Knowing Brahman, one becomes Brahman. Not that a person is transformed into something other, but that the illusion of being other than Brahman is finally and completely released. The survivor of the dream. The student, having recognized the truth, notices something strange. The dream has broken, and yet the world still appears. I still see trees, I still feel hunger, I still hear the noise of the city. If the two has been dissolved, why does the appearance of two remain? Does my knowledge have a gap in it? The teacher clarifies the distinction between existence and appearance. Knowledge does not erase the world from your eyes. It dissolves the claim of the world's independent reality. It is like the man who has been shown that a mirage is sunlight on sand. He still sees the shimmer of water on the road, but he no longer runs toward it with a cup. The vision is an echo. The reality is silence. The mind of the sage continues to produce ripples. Thoughts of I should eat or the sun is hot still arise. The ordinary person identifies with the ripple, saying I am hungry or I am thinking, and is carried away by the wave. The sage sees the ripple as a biological movement in the mind instrument and says the mind is hungry, the intellect is calculating. The sage inhabits the personality as a costume required for this particular life, performs the lines of that life with care and precision, but never forgets that the true home is off stage, in the unblinking awareness of the self. Why does the body not simply dissolve when the truth is recognized? The Upadesa Sahasri does not elaborate the full three karma schema here. The detailed accounting of stored past actions, newly generated future actions, and the momentum of this particular life belongs to other texts in the tradition, but the practical reality it points to is clear enough. The sage is like an arrow already in flight. Once a shaft has been released from the bow, it must complete its arc regardless of whether the archer has in the meantime understood that the target was a mistake. The biography has its own momentum and will run its course. The sage does not identify with that arc. The sage is the open sky through which the arrow is flying. Consider the snake that sheds its skin. The snake leaves the old skin on an anthill. The snake is gone, sleek and free. It does not look back at the skin. It does not care whether the skin is trodden on or honored. The sage is that snake. The body is the shed skin. To the world, the skin looks like the snake. To the sage, it is what was outgrown. The biological drama continues. The awareness it appears within was never contained by it. The final seal. The student, standing in the fullness of recognition, asks one last, quiet question. The 1,000 teachings have been spoken, the logic has been applied, the mirrors have been broken. But if I am the ground state, and have always been the ground state, what was the ignorance that started this journey? If the two never truly existed, who was the I that was searching, and who was the teacher who taught? The teacher says, you are asking about the history of a shadow. Knowledge is the dissolving of its own process. The person who wakes from a dream of theft does not look for the dream thief to reclaim their gold. The sage does not look for the origin of ignorance once the sun is up. Ignorance is defined not by its origin, but by its removability. Realization is not a movement from one place to another. It is the end of the hallucination that the two places were ever separate. If you were bound and then became free, your freedom is a product. Anything that is a product is subject to time. A freedom that was gained can eventually be lost, but you were never bound. The search for the self was like a man looking for his glasses while they were sitting on his nose. The finding is not a gain. It is the end of a meaningless agitation. And now the words themselves must be released. The mirror metaphor was used to reveal the face. The syntax of identity was used to dissolve the other. Now silence is used to dissolve the teachings. The Upadesa Sahasri, the 1,000 instructions, enters the mind, performs its work, and then dissolves, like the nut used to clarify water, which purifies and then settles into the sediment below. If you are still thinking about the teachings, you are still holding the medicine. Put the medicine down. Stand as the healthy whole. What remains when the 1,000 teachings fall silent is awareness itself, the partless mass of knowing. It is not a void, for it is the witness that makes the void impossible. It is not a state, for states have a beginning and an end. It is simply what is. The one who recognizes this is no longer ruling a kingdom. The one who recognizes this has realized that they are the kingdom, the space, the unblinking eye that makes existence a fact. The light is self-validating. It never needed a teacher. The shadow was functional. It never had a heart of its own. Identity is immediate. It was never lost. Here end the 1,000 teachings of the One.